So let's begin by creating our process. So I'm going to open up Studio and click Process. And I'm going to provide a process name and process description as seen. Go over to Show Advanced Options. And I'm going to choose a location on my computer where I store all my Uipath projects. So I'm just going to choose Uipath projects and select this folder. You can go ahead and leave it as the default. It doesn't matter. For compatibility, I'm going to be using Windows language VB.NET, and I hit create. Now let's create our very first custom workflow. I'm going to hit new, hit sequence, and I'm going to give my workflow a name of setup campaign list, and I'm going to hit create. Head over to activities. Inside of this workflow, I'm going to have a sequence, and I'm going to be building all the bunch of stuff for this workflow within a sequence, and that's best practice. So before we start building, let's describe what this workflow does. I'm going to right click here and I'm going to add an annotation, and it's just going to be a brief description of what this workflow does. So this workflow is going to create an Excel file if the Excel file does not exist. The Excel file would always be created in this location: C drive, email campaign, repo/dumps. And the Excel file is going to have a sheet called email data. And that email data sheet is going to have an Excel page with a column email address, which is going to contain the list of email addresses. So let's go ahead and build this workflow. So the very first thing we want to do is create a folder if the folder does not exist. So I'm going to have a multiple assign right here. And I'm going to create my very first variable, Control K, and I call it campaign folder path. And I hit enter. And that's going to be the location of where the Excel file or where our campaign list will be saved on a local computer. I'm going to set its value to this. So every computer is always going to have a C drive. So I'm saying just go into the C drive and find this folder path. So this is the folder path where our campaign list will be saved. And I hit Control S. The next thing I want to have is my campaign file path. So go ahead, hit Control K and create a campaign file path. And for the file path, I'm going to set the value to this. I'm going to do a path.combine, which is the campaign folder path, comma, data.xlsx, because the name of our Excel file will be called data.xlsx and it will live inside of our campaign folder. So I hit save, Control S to save. Now the very first thing we want to do is check if the folder exists. So we want to check if our campaign folder exists. So we're going to point our campaign folder exists. Mind you, we're using the folder exist, and we're going to save this in a variable. Does campaign folder exist? I'm going to hit enter. Next, we want to have an if condition. So right over here, have an if condition. And in this if condition, we want to say if does campaign folder exist. So if does campaign folder exist, we want to do nothing but just log a message. Log a message that says great, campaign folder exists. Now, if campaign folder does not exist, we want to create a folder. So I'm going to use a create folder activity right here in the else. And what folder do we want to create? We want to create the campaign folder path. Very simple. Hit Control S to save. So basically what's going on here is check if the campaign folder exists. Campaign folder does not exist. We want to create a folder. Campaign folder, does campaign folder exist? We just want to log a message and say great, campaign folder exists. I really love log messages. So I'm going to add 2 log messages, one here and one right below my create a campaign folder. For the first message, I'm going to say creating a campaign folder, log level of info. And for the second, I'm going to say successfully created a campaign folder, and it's going to be a log level of info. Hit Control S to save. One very last thing, I love to add some annotations. So right click on your if statement and go to annotations, add annotations, and just describe what this does. So this is going to create a campaign folder if it does not exist. Now, let's shrink this. The next thing we want to do is create a file, a campaign file, which is going to be our Excel file. So you want to look for a file exists activity. You want to drag this right after the previous if statement, and here you want to check if the campaign file path exists. So you want to create a boolean here, and you want to say, does campaign file exist? You want to hit enter, and just like we did before, we want to have an if condition and do some evaluation right here, and we want to say, does campaign file exist? Now, if campaign file exists, we just want to have a log message that says previous campaign file found, and we don't want to do anything. But if the campaign file does not exist, we want to build an empty campaign data. So go ahead, look for a build data table activity, edit the build data table activity. Remember, going by the requirements, we want a table with a column email address. So make sure you have just one column on the build data table activity, and the column should have a name of build address, a data type of string, because email addresses would be of string type. You hit OK. Make sure the table is empty, so it's going to look like this, and hit OK. Go ahead to the property of the build data table activity. You want to take that data into a variable called campaign data. Hit enter and Ctrl S to save. Now we have built an empty campaign data. We need to write this to our campaign Excel file. So go ahead to activities and look for an activity called write range. If you're doing this for the first time, just like me, you would not be seeing write range. So go ahead, go to design, hit manage packages, all packages. You want to look for a package called uipath.excel.activities. Click on this package, get it installed to the most recent version. Please avoid any preview versions. 3.21 is the most recent full version. Hit install and save. It's going to restore some dependencies and install that package into your project. Now you can see we have write range workbook. So dragging the write range workbook right below your build data table activity. For your workbook file name, it's going to be your campaign file path. For your sheet name, going by the requirements, let's look at the requirements again. It says the sheet name should be called email data. Just to keep this simple, I'm just going to add another variable right here, add, and call it campaign sheet name. I hit enter, expand on the value here, and you want to set the value to email data. Hit save and come down right here, and for the sheet name, we're going to be using campaign sheet name, and for the data table, we're going to be using campaign data. And that's all we have to do. Hit Ctrl S to save. There are a few things you need to look out for. So on your write range workbook activity, click on this, go over to properties. You want to make sure that the add headers is checked so that the headers of the campaign data would go into the Excel. And just like I always appreciate the use of log messages, I'm going to have two log messages, one right above my build data table activity. Just going to say creating campaign workbook, and another right below my write range. I'm going to have the message successfully created my campaign workbook. Everything looks good, and again I hit Ctrl S to save. Before we hop off, I'm going to do a quick test here. So I'm going to go into my setup campaign list workflow, and on the right hand side I have my C drive opened up right now on my computer. So I'm going to run this workflow by hitting the debug, and from the output logs, if you go to the output logs, you can see it started the workflow and it's creating the campaign folder, and it successfully created the campaign folder, and it's creating the campaign workbook, and it successfully created the campaign workbook. And if you look at my C drive, you can see that repository there, email campaign repo. And if you go to DOMS, you will see the Excel file data.xlx. So open up the Excel file, and it is exactly what we expected. For the second test, I would write something into the Excel file. So I just want to make sure that the Excel file would not be overwritten by the robot. So I'm going to save this and I'm going to write an email address, test@gmail.com, save and close the Excel file. And let's do a second run. So I'm going to run this workflow, set up campaign list again for the second time. And you can see from the output panel, it does not create any workbook again. If you go back to DOMS and you open up this Excel file, you can see that my previous data still exists. So the workflow works exactly as expected. I'm going to save and see you guys in the next video.